was Atria imprint of Simon & Schuster. So, you know, in for penny, in for pound, which is a saying that I throw into the novel every now and again, because, you know, before you know it, I'm on my 4th right now. And I'm already planning the 5th. It's in the back of my head. I pretty much know what I'm going to write about. So, you know, you sort of propel yourself forward. Life propels you forward. And experiences happen to you that, I was just telling a friend today that I had a pretty bad experience this over the last few months, and somebody else said to me, you know, that would make a good novel. That is the basis of your 5th novel, and sure enough, that is going to be the basis of the 5th novel. So life just keeps providing material. Third world life really provides you with some juicy material because an island like Jamaica is a microcosm of the world, really, especially a microcosm of the third world. So the first book, I guess I shouldn't reveal the social issue of the first book.
I think you should.
You think I should? Okay, so the first book deals with lots of stuff, but also with political corruption. And the second book is a lot more sensitive. And the second book came about because I almost feel as if I had no control over writing the second book, as if it was, you know how Michelangelo said that the sculpture is already in the stone. It's just a matter for the sculptor to find that particular shape and form. That's exactly what happened with this second book. It was not a book that evolved the way Goat Woman evolved. It was about, the stone was there, and the stone had been created by easily 5 of my friends who were murdered in Jamaica. And they were murdered because they were gay. And my business partner was gay. And then through my business partner, I met many people in leadership positions who were gay in Jamaica. And our accountant was murdered. The head of the Jamaica Federation of Lesbians and Gays was murdered. A very, very nice man, and I liked personally. I didn't know him deeply, but you know, I knew him enough to like him a lot. And 3 or 4 other people. And that gay business partner ended up having to leave the country in 24 hours because his life was threatened. He was told he was going to be murdered. They were coming to, they don't call it lynching in Jamaica, but they were coming to lynch him. And he was actually working in the rural areas when they told him they were coming to lynch him. Somebody gave him a heads up, they're coming tonight. So he packed up all his stuff. He was consulting way out. And he drove his car back to Kingston. And as he drove in, his neighbor called out and said, you know, called out something very abusive, saying that they were going to murder him. And this is a very quiet, beautiful, serene, very spiritual guy, very artistic. He was an artist. And he packed his bags and he left in 24 hours. He gave over his home to somebody to take care of. And he, thank God, he had an American visa. So he was able to get on a plane and leave the country. He has never gone back. And it's like an open sore for him that he will never be able to go back to Jamaica. He got refugee status in this country. It took him a long time, took him years to get through because he had to provide all this documentation about, oh, there's a lady I met today in a church and she came. Stacy, come sit down, Stacy, come on. I'm so glad she came. Did you bring your kids? Oh, your baby, okay, I understand. You have to keep moving. Thank you very much for coming. She's a copyright lawyer, by the way. She looks like she's 16, but she's a good person for me to know. So anyway, so it just so happened that Larry and I moved to Atlanta because we parted and gone different places. We moved to Argonne Avenue. We moved to Atlanta the same month, and we had no idea. I actually was staying out in Smyrna, and he was on Argonne. I used to live on Argonne, and we hooked up again, and you know, we've stayed close friends ever since. He was one of the experts for this book. So the book has been well looked at by 4 experts, and documentation, statistics in it are correct. It doesn't have a lot of statistics, but every now and again I drop something in. Because I wrote, it took me 5 years to write Good Woman. It took me 3 months to write this book. And it was a book that from I first began to write it, from that very first chapter, I knew exactly where this book was going to go. But I didn't know the ending. So that was the thing. I knew where the book was going to go. I knew where it had to come out, but I had no ending for it. You know, and I think because, you know, you reach a spiritual point in your life where you just have to kind of let go and say, it's one day it'll evolve somehow. But that was kind of like, niggly little thing, you know, ending. Anyway, so I decided I was going to go anywhere the wind took me, and I put my apartment up, my condo up on Craigslist for an exchange. I love home exchanges. And so I got this letter from a couple in San Francisco, and they said, well, we want to come to St. Croix in July, and we live in San Francisco, and you can come to our home. And they sent me lovely photographs, and looked very nice. What they did not tell me was that Mark Twain had said the coolest winter he ever spent was July in San Francisco. And that was why they wanted to come to St. Croix. I'm thinking, why did they? Anyway, I just go. So that meant I had to be bundled up all the time. Fog would come over, it would just sit down on that. I was in the Presidio, you know, you didn't have very good transportation, you're out in the boonies, what the? I am here, I don't know anybody, you know, I take the bus in and walk, Fisherman's Walk, which looked very commercial to me after all these years. And then I got to be friends with the neighbors, and it turned out, of course, San Francisco, they were gay people, and they loved the idea of this book. So they used to invite me over, and then we would sit down over hot chocolate, which I love, and cake, and we would talk about this book. And then they started inviting their friends around. And so there would be this debate about the book should go this way, it should go that way, no, this is how he thinks, that is how she thinks, that's what would happen, that's why they're different, that's why this one would be different from that one. I mean, we really had it out. And by the end of that time, I knew how the book was going to end. It was just perfect. So in my acknowledgements, the first people who I consider my angels to have come along and just resolved that issue for me over hot chocolate and cake, which, you know, there's nothing better in the whole world. So that was great. So the book evolved very quickly, and then of course I had to polish it, do a few more drafts, and then I sent it in. And I kind of held my breath because Simon & Schuster, they tend to be, well, Atria, you have to understand, I'm with Atria Imprint, because everybody's with an imprint, you know, a different section of the publisher. And I had to kind of hold my breath and hope. Atria is a little bit more radical, edgy than the other imprints. But even so, they're pretty conservative. And this is not a conservative book. So, you know, the tough thing is after you send in your manuscript, then the editor keeps you waiting like 3 months. You know, and every day you get notes saying, am I going to hear from her today? Am I going to hear from her today? And then one day she just said, this is a winner, you know, you got a good book. You got a good book here. So then I was able to breathe, and after that, and you know, we went forward with the book. So I think she gave me advice about changing one issue that I was able to change very quickly and turn it back in. And then of course, editors have to be very discreet. They can't guarantee anything. They can't really compliment you very broadly. They have to be very careful how they speak to you. So of course, I had to hear it from the publicist who said, your editor said that this is the book that's going to get you known. She will never tell me that. Of course, as far as she's concerned, it's still, you know, it's a good book. We'll just see how it goes. You know, she's being very tactful about it. But I'm feeling pretty good about this book.
And she's not saying, her editor is our dear friend Malaika Adero, who was here last week. I don't know if you know that. She was here because of Tanner Reed was here at Spelman, so she came in because she's also her editor. And I did speak with her about the book, and what I love, I'm the sneaky one who's read it, is the amount of detail. I could actually see the house. I could see the spaces. I could feel that chorus. Am I making you want to read it? Because they haven't read it yet. Anybody else read the second book yet? Nobody else? Oh. Okay. So, you know, what we would love for you to do, in addition to talking about the process, but also we'd like for you to read something from the second book. The first book, when you were here, you gave us a little taste of it. And since most people, no one except me, has read it, then is there a section that you'd like to read from it? Yeah. I would really like you to have a chance to read from it. So we're doing several things. You're going to read from one of my copies? Isn't that one?
Yeah. God bless them.
Right. We're going to do several things. We're going to actually, you know, have her read from the book. We're going to give you an opportunity to ask her questions about the writing process, the actual sitting down and getting it written. This book is much more, to me, detailed than the first book, than the Yargo, the Goat Woman book. And because of the level of detail, it created all of this suspense inside of me that I could not explain to other people. I would actually read it, I think, like in 50-page spurts, and then have to set it down and think about it and process it. And I don't know if that was something that you intended the reader to feel, this suspense, because I did not know who was doing. I was feeling like Shad. You know, I was the detective trying to figure out and put the pieces together myself. Was that intentional?
Part of it was intentional. This is a learning process. You never stop learning. In whatever field you're in, you never stop learning. And so I am learning. I'm a big Agatha Christie fan. So I'm learning how to build in mystery more and how to build suspense more. I hate to say it, I was sitting in church today and heard something the minister said, and said, oh yeah, I have to add that. More suspense into that section. So I'm making it, but this one I think was a combination of inspiration as well as learning. So I'm cruising a little bit now on my fourth, but the second was one which I built in a lot of tension, and I think I grasped the tension more, how to get it in. Somebody once said to me recently, in fact I had my first launch in St. Croix a few days ago, I mentioned something about the learning process, and this woman who is an author came up to me and said, "Never say that again, dear. You know, don't tell them you're learning. You know, let them think that you." But as far as I'm concerned, that's the truth. You know, you never stop. You keep growing, and with your subject matter and with your professional area. So I'm going to read from the beginning. And the reason I like to read from the beginning is that then you have to buy the book, right? It's just as if you have read from the beginning. I never do like it, to tell you the truth, when writers read from the middle of their book, and I feel that I'm kind of hamstrung because I'm not sure quite how we got there. So, you know, you have to ask me how we got there, right? And I don't have to explain it. So this is chapter 1, page 1, and it takes place in October 2011. With each passing mango tree filtering sunshine onto the asphalt, with each aquamarine bay spreading before him, Shadrach Myers became gloomier and his forehead more crumpled. The things that usually delighted him, a mongoose scooting across the road, children waving as he drove past, went unnoticed on this trip. So set was his mind on the man he was about to meet. The bartender's anxiety had started shortly after 10 o'clock that morning when his boss, Eric Keller, had approached him holding the keys to the Jeep. "Joseph's plane comes in at 4:15, the boss had said. "I need you to go. I can't take the long drive, not with these." He had lowered himself to a chair as if it were hot, one hand waving toward his rear end. Distracted by the thought that a white American could have hemorrhoids like any black Jamaican, Shad had kept his face expressionless and nodded, and it was only an hour later that he realized the import of his mission. "I'm going to Montego Bay Airport to pick up Mr. Eric's son," Shad had explained to Beth, the mother of his 4 children, while she was stirring pigeon pea soup for his lunch, a sleeping baby Joshua on her left hip. "You mean the batty boy?" Beth had answered, looking at him sideways with a wrinkle between her brows. Shad had cringed inwardly. If the first thought Beth had had about Joseph was that he was gay, it would be on the mind of every other villager. "Why are you coming to Largo?" she asked. "To write a business proposal, so they call it. The investor man who going into business with Mr. Eric want to see one. And since the boss don't have no money to pay a Kingston consultant, he called Joseph. He say he send him to a fancy university in America to learn all that kind of thing, and he must be able to do it. If you ask me, what he really like is that he don't have to pay Joseph until the investor man give us the money." Beth had only sighed and returned to her stirring. The quivering of her wide nostrils and the pursing of her mouth told it all. Shad moved behind her and put one arm around her plump waist and the other around Josh's stumpy legs, feeling the rhythm of her stirring and smelling Scotch bonnet pepper in the soup. They were both silent, remembering the other young man, the one named Gideon. It was 10 long years ago now, but he knew she was thinking about that terrifying night when he had come home at 1 in the morning to find her hugging a pillow in their tiny living room, the lights still on. When he asked her what had happened, she had looked at him with huge eyes and told him how Gideon, Miss Elsa's 16-year-old son from down the road, had come over earlier in the evening to take another sewing lesson, and how she had given him a piece of fabric to start pleating. "Then I heard the voices," she said, and started crying, the words squeezed out between sobs still fresh in his mind all these years later. "I hear them coming closer and closer, and Gideon and I just freeze, and the boy stops sewing. His hands, he's still holding the cloth I give him to stitch, and he turn his head, and his long narrow face just get longer, and he lean over the sewing machine listening." She had stood up, needing to act it out, a young woman of 22 who had never known such fear. The people get closer until they're almost outside, only the walls separating us. So many people, making noise at the same time and sounding wild like animals, like they're just braying and cackling and crowing, all kind of noise. And a woman shouting out that Leviticus that he say this and Leviticus say that. And I go to the window and I peep under the curtain. I'm careful they don't see me. I couldn't see the faces, just hands and feet. They walk in with machete and stick and one man carrying an axe. And I look at the youth, tall like his dead father. And the two of us know that they're coming to kill him just because he a batty boy, and they say he come from the devil, the poor boy who can't help how he born. Just because he act girlish sometimes, they're coming to kill him. And look at him, and he stand up. I go into Mama, he say, and like he start to cry, and I hush him. She put one finger to her lips, the horror of it drying her tears. They pass us, all the people, and I hear them stop outside the boy's house up the road. I hear them call out to his mother, telling him to come out and calling him a sodomizer. I hear them shouting to each other to watch the doors, don't let him escape. And I go to the boy and I put my hand on his shoulder and he's shaking. And I say to him in his ear, I give you some money and you take a taxi. No. Go to Port Antonio, go to your auntie. I tell him, they're not going to trouble your mother. It's not she they come for. And I tell him to hide in the bushes on the side of the house and run behind them to the main road. And I let him out of the side door and I tell him to go to his auntie. Shad had held her on the love seat afterward, and he had rocked her to calm the terror when it bubbled up again. Before daylight, he had crept out of the house and gone to Miss Elsa's to tell her that her son was safe, that he was in Port Antonio with her sister. Thank you, was all the small Indian woman said before quickly closing the door. After gulping down his bowl of soup this noontime, Shad had kissed Beth and set off west in the old jeep along the coast road toward Montego Bay. And since he was both Largo's unofficial sheriff and a praying man, he spent much of his time during the drive having a little chat with God about Joseph. Please don't make him gay, was the gist of the prayers. Make it that he was just going around with funny friends when he was younger and he growing out of it now. Because if he's still gay, it's me that have to protect him. No, from a writer, another writer.
So you see what I'm talking about. And I had to read it in, like I said, in 50-page pieces because you just kept it going. Aren't you wondering? Because the suspense is already palatable in the room. You want to know what happens next because Joseph did get off that plane.
Joseph did get off that plane.
Okay, Jay.
Yeah.
Is that the actual circumstance of how they deal with gay people in Jamaica?
Is that the actual circumstance? Yes. That would be if somebody who might be gay, because this is a might situation, it's not a for sure that Joseph is gay. It's just kind of, people in Jamaica tend to pick up little things about sexuality and then make assumptions based on those things that they pick up. So Joseph had visited once before, and they had picked up on some things that had made them suspicious. And of course, most people in the village can't read or write, so the verbal grapevine is extremely important. And the word had spread that, because Joseph did this or had made this choice or, that, he might be gay. So, and villages, small rural villages where people don't move around a lot, have history, and they know each other's histories. So, Joseph came for a few days 10 years before, and they still have this history. So his behavior or things that he did then, still stay with him, and they remember that as part of the communal history. So he has to either overcome it or, you know, so, and that situation remains, and then there are other things that push him, Joseph, to do certain things and make certain things happen. But yes, if you were from a rural town, from a small town, you would be wondering, if you were somebody like Shad, you know, Shad is a protector. He's sort of, he thinks of himself as a caretaker of the village. So it would be up to him to try to keep the peace and, you know, to take care of things. So yeah, that is still the case. In fact, it seems to be more so. I'm going to answer your question in a minute, but about 3 weeks ago, I don't know if anybody saw the YouTube video on the gay bashing in Jamaica at the University of Technology. It is on YouTube, and let me tell you, I mean, I had to go through some stuff to write this book, but I got nauseous looking at that gay bashing. I had never seen anything like that. I'm sure other people have, but I had never seen that. And it was 2 security guards, you know, who found someone in a bathroom, and the word got out around the university, and a crowd of people gathered around the bathrooms, and then it just became this horrible situation. It just got worse and worse, and they started beating the man, and it's all shot, and a student shot it thinking it was kind of amusing, and they put it up on YouTube, and of course it created a furor once it went up online. And it's ironic that it happened almost in juxtaposition with the double gay murder just a few days before in an open lot in Kingston. 2 gay men were found slashed to death in an open lot overnight. And the police's theory was that they killed each other. No machetes found, but they murdered each other, slashed each other, and left each other. It's a known area for gay prostitution. That neighborhood around the hotels in New Kingston. But that happened a few days before the gay bashing. So I think that kind of, it tends to come in spurts, and it sort of accelerate, and you find incidents happening quickly around each other, and then it will die down again for a while. So just in October this happened. So it hasn't gone away. It has not gone away. Question?
Just for clarification, didn't Beth and Chad get married at the end of Goat Woman of Love Away?
Oh, I like somebody with history of the series. They do not get married at the end of. Oh, let me tell you, Shad isn't going to let go of his singlehood for a little while. No matter how hard Beth plans and plots, and you know, so we'll get more into it.
The commitment is there.
The commitment is there. Thank you. Yes, they're very committed to each other.
And all of the children are there too.
Oh, and the 4 children are there. Yeah, and he's very much a family man. He's devoted to his family. So there is that. But that's another. That is another tradition in Jamaica that men don't get married. There's a lot of hesitancy about committing, and you can have multiple children, be very devoted, and yet still not want to get married. So Shad has to go through that struggle. He goes through a lot of struggles and a lot of growth over the 10 books, which of course now I have to write. So he does grow, like we all do, go through change, and things happen to him. So things happen to him in this book, and he discovers a disability with one of his children, and he gets in deeper with that. And then by the 3rd book, he's going through some personal changes that he realizes he needs to make in himself. So Shad keeps evolving. Eric, who is not only the father of Joseph in this 3rd book, but Eric is the owner of the bar where Shad works. And Eric is they have them in the Virgin Islands too. I mean, these are the men who come, they stay for 40 years, they come from the mainland, they can't turn around and go back because they didn't realize how expensive it was going to be, so all their money is gone, and so they can't go back to wherever they came from, right? And so they have to stay in the Caribbean, just kind of trying to make it and survive as best they can. So Eric, who's from Shaker Heights, Ohio originally, ends up in Jamaica on the North Coast with a little bar that Shad works in. And Shad has to make sure that that bar stays alive because that's his livelihood. Otherwise, he has to go back to fishing, and he hates fishing. Your hands smell bad, you get cut up, you have to go to work at night, you don't know if you're going to drown. So he's not keen on any of those things. So he's trying to hang on to this little bartending job and make sure that Eric survives. So he keeps Eric straight. That's Shad's job, to try to keep Eric. That's why he says he has to protect Joseph, right? He has to keep his job.
Hey, Jillian, you said that you had a friend, one of your best friends that was gay and was killed?
Well, one of my best friend is a guy in DC who managed to make it out. He was going to be killed, and he managed to make it out, and he is now a refugee. But in case anybody doesn't know, I do have it in the book. I'll just tell you that between the only measurement we have, because the government doesn't want to measure how many gays are killed or die. So the only measurement we have is a human rights report that 30 people were murdered between 1997 and 2004. So that's the only statistic that we actually have up to today. But you're talking about Brian Williamson, to whom the book is dedicated. And we weren't close friends, but he was close friends with my business partner. So he'd come to work, or I'd see him out, and we'd socialize together. And a very friendly guy. Knew that founding the organization, he kind of knew it would lead to his death. He knew it, and yet he did it. Yeah, and he was an interior designer. Lovely man, funny, good sense of humor.
Has any word leaked out here in Jamaica about what this book is about? What kind of reactions are you getting in Jamaica?
I've had, the pub date was Tuesday gone, December 4th. So I have had no word yet. But I know it's going to be heavily criticized. And I did a reading in Toronto this year from the galley, and a Jamaican man was there. And he was from a very well-to-do family. And he was very defensive. He would not accept this. He said, gays kill each other. Nobody comes and kills them. It just doesn't happen. And they're very emotional people. They kill each other. So that's going to be the defense of some.
Is any of this violence ever enacted towards lesbians in Jamaica?
That's a very good question, and I touch on it in the book too. There is harassment, but you don't see this level of violence. It's actually written into the laws of Jamaica, where if two men are caught in an act of sodomy, that they both will go to prison for 10 years. A minimum of 10 years. Now, granted, there are some countries that are more, right? Executions in Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Mauritania, and so on. So, Jamaica is not the worst. The tool that Jamaica has that makes it more dangerous is the music. Because you have Beanie Man, Buju Banton, the big reggae stars, dance hall stars, musicians, who promote killing, burning, torturing gay people in their music. And that's what their lyrics say. In fact, many of them have been banned. 5 of them have been banned from entering this country because of the gay lobby. But, and Buju Banton is now in prison. we should be having an interesting time since, we put out the word. Nothing has been heard of him recently. So, the music continues. I think my problem, and I hammer it home in this book, is that the politicians do not crack down on the musicians writing these horrible, horrible lyrics. And it's because of politics. They'll say something on the campaign trail to one group of people and then hide it from another group of people, and then when they come into office, nobody knows anything, right? So the inactivity, what I really wanted to do with this book is spur conversation, dialogue. There are going to be a lot of Jamaicans who will be in denial about it, and there will be others who will be pushing it, because there is a peace organization that's pretty active now in Jamaica, and around these the double murder and the gay bashing, that peace organization, which is pretty powerful because it's made up mostly of middle-class people, they lobby really hard. And they're mostly straight people, although it's a mixed group. So they have a voice. When they speak, they have a voice. So I'm going to be very interested to see the dialogue that occurs. And they came out against the gay bashing.
Jillian, is the social media having any impact down there on this issue? Do you talk about that at all in the book?
No, I don't. No, because what you don't want to see, you don't see. So if you don't open up the websites, you won't know what the rest of the world is saying. We are talking about 180-degree difference in opinion here between the people who want gays murdered, tortured, wiped off the map, and the people who believe these are human beings like all of us, equal rights, etc. And there's almost no middle ground in Jamaica. You're either, it's sort of like, Jamaica's a country of extremes. You're well-to-do or you're poor. We have a small middle class, but not a lot of people are middle class. So now they've had, I think, three books on homophobia in Jamaica. They've had several research studies for the Caribbean. A lesbian woman wrote a memoir, and she talks about her life growing up and harassment and people talking about her to her face, behind her back, and she finally left the country. So there's her memoir, and then there are a couple other books, but they're non-fiction, all of them, all three of them. This is the first fictional treatment of homophobia in Jamaica, and I'm kind of holding my breath to see, because people read fiction. A lot of people read fiction who may not read this woman's memoir that's written in a literary style. Literary style kind of hard. I write in a different style. I write in a combination literary and popular fiction style, which makes it more mass appealing. Sorry.
How's the Anglican Church in Jamaica responding to the gay bashing? Or are they? But in Africa, they come out very much against homosexuals.
I know.
And in Jamaica, they're not?
No, because Jamaica is in the west and more in the west, so they have to be kind of careful. So it's almost like, did it happen? Oh, it happened. Oh. There is a little bit of reference to the Old Testament and to Leviticus say this and Leviticus say that, but they're educated Western people, so they don't want to. jeopardize themselves, lose their congregation, or the more liberal, progressive members of the congregation. Now, the evangelists, the fundamentalist Christians in the rural areas, they tend to talk against, they talk of homosexuality as a choice that evil people make. And, that's how they treat it. But in Kingston, where the more powerful religious people are, the heads of the churches and so on, they don't want to touch it. They're very, very cautious about discussing it.
With what you said about that, hear no, speak no, see no evil, is anyone ever caught for murdering someone in that situation?
They tend to, if it's a gay-on-gay murder, and I do want to talk about that, they then arrest the obvious party, usually a former lover. But it's a lynch mob, and there have been many. Nobody gets arrested. Nobody gets touched. And there are a number of gay-on-gay murders. But we have to think about the context in which those murders occur, much as you find here in some neighborhoods where you find, they say, well, blacks are killing blacks. You have to look at the context of what happens that creates those kind of tensions and antagonism. Usually what happens in Jamaica with gay-on-gay murders is that one member of the duo is usually middle class, upper middle class, and then they will have a lover who is a poor, rural, usually younger, often younger person. And this is different for gay women. It's quite different. This is gay men. So you'll find a professor at the University of the West Indies having, and this actually did happen, having a young gay lover who also kind of acts as a housekeeper and, houseboy kind of thing. Now that context is that young man may or may not be gay, but it's a way for him to make a living and for him to meet interesting people, who he would not normally be able to meet. So it's actually seen as being a way to progress socially for that young man. Now, if the lover rejects him and throws him out of the house, or they end the relationship, he has nowhere to go because he probably does not have any money and he cannot go back to his village because he has been blacklisted. If he goes back, he's as good as dead. So the venom that comes out in these situations, and there have been many of them, and it did happen with a UWI professor, where you get a murder taking place because he has nothing to lose. This person, he's very angry, he's in a rage. Everything he has been lost. So we've seen a number of those kinds of murders. In those cases, you do find that they will make an arrest because it's obvious, So that's why they want to believe that it's just gay-on-gay murders, which is not the case. I mean, we've had many situations where people have been. There was one incident that comes back to me every now and again of a crowd that I think a market woman got into an argument with a young gay man, and then she picked up a machete and started running after him, and then other people started running after him, and they chased him down a pier all the way to the end, and he couldn't swim, and he jumped off, and they watched him drown. They laughed at him and watched him drown. So there have been certainly incidents like that. And then the J-Flag president was murdered by unknown assailants in his own home. He was slashed to death.
You're taking a pretty courageous stand to expose this, the political corruption and culture.
That's why I stay on the move. Thank you.
And that was one of my with Goat Woman that you actually went to Jamaica immediately after being in Atlanta to do a book discussion group there. Are you going to travel to Jamaica to present this book?
Not for a while. I think I'm going to wait for a couple more books, a couple more years, yeah, to go back. And I just wanted to make sure that, because every country, every new country you go to, you open a new market, then your publisher has to negotiate the rights for that country or that territory. So I wanted to break, the Caribbean open and force their attorneys to, sign contracts and do certain things. So I wanted to do it for that reason. I went to Cayman, had a signing there as well. So I wanted to break open those markets, and then I go to Trinidad around Carnival time, launch. So I'm going in February to Trinidad. So that.
But would still the politics around homosexuality, won't they be the same on many of the other islands as well?
I don't think they're anywhere as virulent. No, I have found in the Virgin Islands that you find local people, the Crucians around me will say, I'm uncomfortable with it. But more and more, I'm finding my students are agreeing with same-sex marriage and same-sex relationships. So America is having its influence. And then in Trinidad, it's an interesting mix. You do find some hostility, but Carnival is largely designed, developed, and created by gay people. So they're very intimately involved with Carnival. So, you don't find that kind of prejudice nearly as strongly as in Jamaica. Anybody?
Having read and heard your early draft of
Right.
Goat Woman, and it's so different from the book that's published. I wonder how easy or hard was it for you to really change the book that dramatically? Shad, when I heard it, was a pretty minor character. And was part of the appeal in changing it? Did you know that you could then address social issues like this?
No, we were in a writing class together for a few years. Where, students, the other students let me know that this is not working. When it wasn't working, thank God, because that really kind of helped me to clean up that. But it evolved, and every time I met another editor and they rejected me, 'cause I think I met about 5 or 6, I would always ask them, what can I do to make it better? And then over time, people would say, if you added this or you added that, or and then just before I did the last rewrite, the last draft was the 21st draft. So, and I came into that class with, I think, my 2nd draft. So, it went a long way. But I just kept incorporating ideas that I thought were worthwhile, that other people would contribute. And one editor did say, I think I mentioned it last time I spoke, one editor did say, look, we don't do white males anymore, as heroes. So Eric was my hero, and I had to pull back on Eric. And she said, take Shad, he sounds like a great character, make him the hero. And so it was just somebody giving me advice that I took. I figured she had been in the business 30 years, she should know something. So I took her advice, and that's what happened. And then another advisor said, you really need to add a little political intrigue to this, and so it kept evolving until I finally found my own genre. The interesting thing is with that first book, slotting your genre is very important in the publishing industry. Especially when you're new, the bookstores want to know what section of the bookstore are they going to put this book in. And libraries want to know the same thing. So they didn't know where to put my book because it was, a love story and a mystery and social commentary and so on. So it was, in fact, that was what some of the reviewers said, that, where does this book fit? And I noticed that with this book, Kirkus Review, they were killer reviewers. If you get a good review from Kirkus, which is the national reviewer for bookstores and libraries, you're okay. They say you're okay. And this time they really liked this book, and they created a genre for me, which has really been a relief to everybody. So it's called A Cozy Mystery with Social Commentary. A cozy is a mystery with no murder. So it's a cozy mystery with cozy with no.
Yes. Totally
There's a sort of murder.
I just caught that. Totally. I wasn't going to tell.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Sue Ross. So, anyway, it's, any other questions before Maria had a question?
What happens to the goat woman? Do you develop her character?
Did you get attached?
Yes.
Somebody said to me, in fact, my teacher from my creative writing class said, what happens to the dog? Does the dog come back? So now I bring back the dog. But, so you want to know what happens with the goat woman?
Well, I mean, I want to know if you're bringing her back.
You will hear from her again.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay, I think.
The title, where?
Oh, I have no idea where that title came from. It just landed in my head one day. I hadn't even thought of a title before I started writing the book. And I was about to write the book, and I literally woke up one day and boom, the title was in my mind. I mean, I had, with Goat Woman, we had like 20-something titles. We went back and forth and back and forth. Same thing with book 3. I think it's okay now. But that was the only title that I created that was given to me. Because I think a lot of this material is given to me. I don't have, I sit down 7 o'clock in the morning and I do a little quiet time, meditation, Sunday meditation. And I just see what comes and I start writing when it comes. So hold for just a minute and then.
So you've committed now to this series of books, and each of them will be their own story with their beginning, middle, and end. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious how much of the larger story arc that these characters will go on over 10 books, how much of that do you already have in your head, or will the end of the 10th book be a surprise to you? Or
absolutely.
Do you know which?
No idea. None. There's only one. There are 3 subplots on one main plot. Each book is a standalone because the main plot changes. The subplots stay the same. They keep growing, keep changing. So I know that the 3 subplots have got to be resolved. The main plot will keep changing with each book. And so I get in fresh heroes and heroines through the main plot each time.
Yes, what do you attribute to your life just goes along, you're not having any particular thoughts involved in anything, then all of a sudden everything goes your way. What do you attribute to that?
You mean my personal life? Without going into a whole lot of detail, it's I really have to say it's a spiritual process where you know where you want to go, you believe that you are going to get there. You have to see. I had to see the book for 5 years, printed. I did see hardcover, but that part didn't happen. But I kept picturing it, in meditation, and kept, just thinking. I would just be tapping away and think, there it is, hardcopy, So I think he's also referring to the fact that I kept saying I'm going back to the Caribbean, and it did happen, and I'm going to get published, and it did happen. I believe that you have to believe in the outcome for it to occur.
And what about the television series?
Oh, that's $1 million check on my mirror.
They don't know that conversation.
They don't know that conversation. There is nothing to report yet. Let me say that. There has been some interest. Let me just put it that way. There is some interest.
I would like to, you started to tell us a little bit about how you write. Would you share more of that? What is your process? Do you write every day? Do you only write in the morning? How do you go about it?
I'm smelling somebody who wants to publish a book.
No, I want to help somebody publish a book.
Oh, okay. I always believe in writing when your brain is sharpest. So 7 o'clock in the morning, you know, I wake up around 5:30 and I lie there for a minute or two, well, half an hour. And I start just, it's kind of a meditative process. I just kind of open up my mind and say, you know, give me some guidance about what I'm supposed to write today. The toughest one is when you're writing the first draft and you have to come up with fresh things every time, every chapter. First 12 to 15 pages, you know, 7 to 9 o'clock every morning, because I have a day job, so I have to go to work. So 7 to 9 a.m. every morning I write. Now, not as much. Now I'm trying to reinvent my life to write more, because I know I can write more than I'm writing now. So I'm planning to kind of restructure my life so that I'm not teaching as much. Teaching is wearing me out, burning me out. But that 2 hours every morning has been really important.
The piece that I love about your books, this book and the last book, which is why it ended up on our reading list for the travel to Jamaica, is all of the behind-the-scenes detail that you include, what people eat, how their houses look. All of that kind of detail is just amazing because it's so accurate now, you know, going back and forth to Jamaica and hearing people, you know, the drinks in the bar, that the bartender's making. I mean, down to all of that. Does it drive you crazy?
That's what the internet is for. You go into Google and you say, rum punch.
No, it's not that.
I think that comes from living in the Caribbean part of the year. And that was, I sensed that I really needed to spend part of the year living in the Caribbean. Because you can't, you know, you're driving along the Caribbean and you're smelling a dead dog, you know, oh, I have to put that in the book. You know, I mean, you have to have.
The car doesn't function because you're at an outdoor function and people are there doing different things, but it's so detailed and so culturally correct, you know.
Well, thank you, Colette. Any more questions, or won't bore you with any more answers?
No question. I just purchased 2 books, and I was told there's a third book.
No, that's a second. Yeah, the publisher has a third right now.
Oh, okay. I'm waiting on it.
She's already agreed to come back for the 3rd book for the launch for it as well. All 10 of them will be launched in Atlanta at Auburn Avenue.
All right.
What do you do socially to get your inspiration for writing, and or how has your family impacted your writing?
That is such a deep question. Let me go back up a little bit. I believe in living with your urges, that you should follow your urges. And in fact, I was thinking about that a lot this morning, that if my instinct tells me to do something, I go with it. You know, and then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You know, but so I do that socially as well. And my family is very important to me. And their encouragement and support is very important. But The interesting thing for me has been that as I've had more success with publishing, that interesting things happen with friends and family. The ones who really love you will stick with you.
Okay.
The ones who are slightly, who might be a little jealous, they tend to fall away. Not that I'm any star by any means, but when you're a big fish in a little pond, St. Croix is 23 miles long. And it's so, socially there, I tend to know to be more by myself and to write and to really focus more on being in the Caribbean and doing what I have to do there. So I don't socialize very much there at all. My socializing tends to be on the mainland. This is where my peeps are. So when I'm there to write, and I'm there to be near the ocean. There's something about being near the ocean for me. It's very healing, and that just nurtures my core that I miss in Atlanta. But people mean a lot, so I have to keep coming back. I have people here in this audience I've known for 30 some odd years, some for 40. Yeah. Yeah.
Julie, are there any kind of exercises, physical exercises that you do
I still do some yoga, yes, Gloria teaches. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I still do my yoga and 15-minute workout in the morning.
Sounds like you're meditating.
Yeah. Well, not as much as I used to. I do though. If I wake up like at 5:30 before the sun comes up, I want to meditate. And my condo faces the east, so it's lovely to be out there and meditate when the sun comes up. Yeah, but I do believe that physical activity is really important to your health. Langston, he was apparently, the only exercise he got was walking up and down 120. They said he didn't exercise very much, right? But he wrote very, very well, so it just goes to show it. But for me, I have to stay fit.
That's it.